It is no surprise to anyone, whether you're a deer hunter or not, that a major cold front swept through the United States a few days ago. Record temperatures in a lot of areas. It's cold here. I think it warmed up to about 10 right now. It was below zero last night. I'm comfy in my coat and what I got on, but imagine if you're living out there. Imagine you're a squirrel where they're probably in a hole in a tree, tail curled around them, staying warm. But imagine if you're a deer. Now, deer can paleo-erect. That simply means they stick their hair out. If you're getting trail camera pictures of them now, they probably look fat and big. That's because their hair is sticking out. And that's like a down coat. When they stick that long winter hair out, that traps air in there, and that becomes great insulation. The creator's always got a plan. But is that enough to offset the calories they're losing trying to stay warm? Well, I want to talk about that today. There's several things deer can do to conserve body heat in these conditions, but the most important one is a layer of fat. That's a big added layer of insulation in addition to sticking their hair out and trapping air in there. And everyone says, well, how do I put fat on a deer now? What do I feed them? Well, please don't start feeding right now. Actually, a lot of deer are killed when we have conditions like this and people feel sorry, so they go dump a bag of corn or something out there. The deer have not been used to eating that. Remember, we don't feed deer, we feed the bacteria in their gut, in their rumen. Those bacteria populations, all different species, kind of change. They ebb and flow throughout the season. Maybe it's in the summer, and we need bacteria that are really good at digesting protein-rich foods, or it's in the fall and we have carbohydrates like acorns. Well, if you're in an area where deer are pretty bad shape and this wicked cold hit, and then you go dump that really rich carb corn out there and they eat a bunch, they look healthy in your backyard or your hunting camp, whatever. I mean, research has shown this for decades. This is nothing new. Then they can walk out in the woods further and you're going to find them 400 or 500 yards and die with a belly full of corn. This was first discovered, I believe, in New York many decades ago. People thought they were doing good and actually harming wildlife. The best thing to do is have really good quality habitat year-round to put fat on their body, store that fat. And you know that as a hunter, right? You harvest a deer during early season, September, not much fat on that deer. And it just keeps, if you keep hunting or your buddies are hunting, you harvest more and more deer, hopefully that fat layer is getting bigger and bigger as the season goes on. By this time of year, research has shown again that deer can survive the winter. They have about 50% of the calories they need on their body in the form of fat, especially in the north. That's probably not true in South Florida or South Texas. And if you think about it, in South Texas, there's not that many acorns because deer don't need a lot of carbohydrates to survive the winter. Before we started doing all the supplemental feeding, a big buck in South Texas might weigh 120, 140 pounds and have a great big Boone and Crockett rack. Now that's changed with, everyone importing grain out of the Midwest and taking it down there. But here in the Ozarks, we didn't have a really good acorn crop this year. And it's going to be tough on deer because those acorns are a big source of carbohydrates. Now, acorn crops ebb and flow. You can improve that by doing good TSI, timber stand improvement, and improving the health of that forest. Behind me, this is right by our office. That forest hasn't been improved yet, and you can see how thick it is. The limbs are all tangled, small canopies on those trees. We're not going to produce a lot of acorns. So you're not going to do much right now to really help deer, except don't stress them out. Don't be chasing them on snowmobiles or four-wheelers or something like that. There's no need for them to burn more calories than they have to. But going into this next year, make sure you have high-quality food plots and really high-quality native vegetation. Here's some common sense things. If you're in an area that's had a really tough winter, well, don't start prescribed fire as soon as it dries out in February, and really clean the table. At least don't burn more than 1/3 of your property. That's the general rule of thumb. You want to leave some quality habitat. You don't want to wipe the whole slate clean. Or disc all your food plots all at once and take all that food away if it's before the growing season. There's no other groceries out in the timber. We want to make sure in really good deer management that there's quality groceries year-round. Another part of that, which is not that popular anymore, is harvesting does. When you have more mouths on the landscape, there's less food for each deer. And that's the primary reason we should be harvesting does, is to balance the amount of groceries with the amount of deer and other wildlife competing for those groceries. So if you missed your doe harvest and season's closed, think about right now, well guys, there's a lot of deer competing for limited quality groceries, and maybe that will help motivate you to start harvesting does as soon as season opens next year, because we know if you wait till last minute, you're probably not gonna meet your objectives.
Growing Deer is brought to you by Bass Pro Shops and Cabela's. Also by Green Cover Food Plots, Winchester, Moultrie Mobile, Fleet Outdoor Apparel, Morel Targets, Fourth Arrow, Scorpion Venom Archery, Case IH Tractors, Ward Laboratories, Burris Optics, G5 Broadheads, Prime Bows, and Redneck Hunting Blinds.
Another great way to conserve resources is not lose them, right? And that's quality cover. Quality cover is important for deer to survive the winter. Quality cover usually means keeping that wind off there. They're living animals, so they suffer wind chill like we do. It's not like a car or brick that doesn't know wind chill. So quality cover is often really thick native grasses or stuff like that, where the wind is really going above it, but they're down. And I explain this often, like if you're in your car, the windows are up, the sun is coming through those windows, it can get really warm even without the car on. Or you're in the redneck blind, it's a sunny day, got the windows shut, gosh, it can get really warm in there. You can take a layer or two off. Well, that's what it's like being in really tall native grass, you're down there low. Remember, when deer have good fat and their hair sticking out, often they won't even melt the snow where they're laying because they're conserving all the body heat. You find deer beds in snow and the snow's not even melted. It's packed down from their weight, but not melted. That's a healthy deer. If you see a lot of melted snow, that deer probably doesn't have a lot of fat, or it's not in good shape and it's losing body heat. Just a little thing you can look at when you're walking around the timber under these conditions. Cover is critical important. And you know how much I don't like cedars. You got really thick cedars, that can be good for keeping the wind off. But I challenge you on a day like today, go in those cedars where the sun's not hitting you. You'll be wicked cold. It's damp and cold and shady in there. Deer want to be in the sun, which brings me up to something else. You're probably noticing more deer feeding in daylight hours right now. Well, they're hungry, but right now when they can get the sun's heat, solar radiation, it's better than feeding at night when it's just wicked cold. So you're gonna see some more deer feeding in daylight hours. You can observe these things and learn how to manage for deer better where you hunt. This front will pass soon. I'm in southern Missouri. It's not gonna stay this way, but if you're in Michigan, South Dakota, North Dakota, New York, all those states up there, there could be many more months of this. That could have a big impact on deer, right, if they're not healthy. We know from research again in South Texas that if there's a lot of rain in the critical months of, March, April, those months when does are having fawns or getting ready to have fawns, those fawns get off to a better start in life, and 5 years later when they mature, there's a bunch of big antlered bucks around. That start is probably more important to them than a drought in the mid-years, like 2 or 3 years when they're old. Well, there's going to be some fawns aborted. There's going to be some does in bad health this year. And those fawns that do survive may not be in very good shape this spring. That could have an impact on the size of antlers, certainly this fall and for years to come. So just another reason that our job as managers is to provide the best quality habitat we can. That's food, cover, water, and balancing the number of deer with the amount of groceries in that area. Understanding these very simple principles is a great way to learn about and enjoy creation. What we really need to do is seek God's word and apply it to our life daily. That's how we understand His will for our lives. Thanks for watching Growing Deer.